What does it take to really survive and stay relevant in coworking when everything around you keeps changing? Claire Carpenter has lived the full reality of coworking, from signing a lease on an empty building to reading the very first membership applications coming in on paper. She's navigated pandemics, shifting government policy, pressure from corporate real estate, and now AI and emerging tech. In this episode, we talk about what actually matters when the environment keeps changing and how coworking operators can stay grounded, resilient, and relevant when the playbook is being rewritten in what feels like month to month. Claire's a seasoned coach, social innovator, entrepreneur with 3 decades of experience developing organisations and empowering individuals. As the founder and former CEO at a leading centre for social innovation and one of Europe's pioneering co-working communities, Claire offers unique expertise in the flexible workspace and social impact sectors. Her mission is to equip individuals, leaders and entrepreneurs with the tools and strategies they need to overcome challenges and achieve their full potential. So welcome to this episode of Flex That Works. Today we are joined by Claire Carpenter. Very excited for this conversation. Claire, how are you doing?
I'm very well. As you know, I'm in a van in Spain and there's a big storm blowing over. So let's just the satellites work.
Claire, I was thinking, I was reflecting on your experience and your background. And of course, people will pick up your experience and all of that as we chat. I was thinking about the intersection of life and passion that tends to come together, and work, of course, that tends to come together in the world of co-working, and specifically for operators. Naturally, our audience is operators and we always look to give as much kind of, I suppose, insight plus practical information as we can, The question that was coming to me is a lot of operators start with a very deep passion for their space, of course, but passion alone doesn't really sustain you, So how do you think now about the role of work in what you would like to, you'd like to build a good life. So how do you think of the role of work within that?
Well, we've all only got so much willpower. There's only so much juice in anyone's tank to keep on swimming up the river. So work is a part of what gives us meaning and value and identity and fulfills us. It should be. But we need other things as well that allow us to rest, to reframe, to pause, to recuperate. And often work culture does not embody decent rest and recuperation within it. So trying to find one's way in balancing drive with relax, especially as someone who's had a lot of drive in life, likes to drive as well, but how do we get a decent balance? And particularly as entrepreneurs, drive is so culturally valued. How do we make that restorative over the long term? Because business isn't built in a day or a week or even a year. You're not getting anywhere in 3 years. You're just starting to find the flow, but genuinely, and building a co-working business takes a long time. So how do you sustain yourself and the team and the organization when the journey is made of many marathons, made of many sprints? If I'd have known what I know now, I might have done things a bit differently.
Really, yeah. What would you do differently? Because I think the world of co-working is, a lot of people are almost stepping away from the rat race, if you like, and they might end up in a co-working space, or they end up around people who work for themselves. And, by its nature, a lot of people in a co-working space typically are designing their own day. So what would you do differently now? If you're running the space and also just, working in a space or designing your own day?
Well, they're different, aren't they? People who are...
Let's go for operators.
Operators, okay. Well, operators, you're building a ship and you may or may not have the architectural plans. You may or may not know how to drive the ship, but you're building something and it's going to take time. It's going to take effort. It's going to take systems and processes, technology. It's going to take management skills, leadership skills, communication skills. It's got so many layers to it. And then you've got the customer focus. So all of those things require that learning on the job, bringing in expertise. Thankfully, there's so much information out there now that you can there's so many different ways to learn now than there were 20 years ago or even 10 years ago. So I think being an operator is not the same as being a customer of a co-working hub. I mean, many customers of hubs run a business that's got a team that may or may not have premises. The very fact of taking on premises and having to pay for them and sustain them and make that viable, that is such a big risk that customers of co-working hubs don't really appreciate, particularly when they want more and more flexibility and reduce their membership trajectory. You just can't guarantee, are people going to be there in 6 months' time, 1 year's time? You can do a fantastic job, but where's the stickability and the loyalness that a hub operator requires? I don't know. We're in changing times. There's a lot more fluidity.
And what would you see more clearly now about operators and leadership than you might have seen when you're in it in the day-to-day, now that you've had some time to reflect?
My leadership and management journey was 20 years, and I was completely enmeshed and embedded in that business, in that organisation, in that team, in the culture, in the community. And it's hard to be so embedded. It's really hard.
So I suppose when you've had also so much experience, I'm conscious we met you in Berlin. I did an event with you. You did a workshop at GC London. In Manchester, I saw you, I think. I saw you in Berlin, and I was conscious, when I was reflecting on the coming up to the interview, that you have interacted with so many operators in the meantime as well in the position of the coaching business you're running. And I was curious where you see leadership landing now, and based on your experience and the challenges operators bring into you in 2025, 26, where you felt you could advise them best, I mean,
I think that it's a faster rat race. Like property is doing any business that requires property is such a commitment. It requires such long-term planning, such investment of finance to get a building into the shape that you want it to be. It doesn't matter whether it's a restaurant, a hotel, an office, whatever, But customers, it seems to me that the world that our customers are living in is more transactional, more fluid. Their staff are more fluid. They might have, they might want to create a culture that's got a lot more remote work or more flexible work. So there's a tension there between the hub operators who are having to think long term and invest long term in premises, like take a mortgage, understand what customers require long term and put that in now at an affordable price, and look for a return that's going to come over time, including all the technologies that are going to be required to run things. Like, that's huge as compared to a customer base that seems to me to be more transactional, transitional, fluid, and depending on the generation you're in, maybe have less stickability. I think there's a real tension there that needs called out. I think the other thing that needs called out for leaders in any sector is a swear word coming, the shit show that is going on a political and environmental world around us. And how do we navigate those real challenges that are going to be coming fast and furious over the months, the years, the decades ahead, when you're in a business that requires long-term planning but probably doesn't have the finance, doesn't have the commitment to, who is your customer base in 5 years' time? Do you know? Who's your customer base in 1 year's time? And what is this context that we're operating in? So maybe that's a bit too deep.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I think it for some operators, they find it difficult enough to know who their customer base are today, and that's something myself and Anne-Marie are constantly talking about. Is like, and again, you've touched on things there, Claire. I mean, you're in the game a long time when it comes to co-working, and I'm sure you've seen a lot of shifts and changes since you started, 20 odd years back. Are you seeing in the industry the number of changes, the evolution? Are you seeing that picking up at pace, or do you see it plateauing now? Do you think we're over the big kind of rush post-COVID, or what are your own sentiments on the industry?
So I've witnessed the pioneering birthing stage, the slightly maturing, the emerging stage, the maturing, then the diversifying into co-living, and into brand lords, into secondary towns and remote work. I've seen all those things. We've then had the COVID crisis, and now the sort of great guns blazing, like people building from the outset. The strategic mission from the outset is 10, 20, 30 spaces in order to get viability. And then you've got the indie operators, maybe running one space, maybe running 3 or 5. Where do they sit alongside these big organizations? We've got the public sector creating co-working hubs and flex, and we've got hotels and anybody else basically saying, "Come, okay, you can come and work in this cafe or this hotel lobby because we want your footfall, we want presence, we want people here. We understand that people is power." And so there's loads and loads of shifts there. Are we sort of in a consolidation stage again? Probably a little bit more maturing and consolidation post the COVID shuffle and what's going on there, where things, disrupted and got destroyed. We don't know what that looks like yet, but it definitely seems to be all guns blazing for making the offering out there, the maturing of that, what's available for people to choose from. What will be there in another 2 or 3 years' time? I think only time will tell. It depends how well they get people to stick and keep coming back.
If you were starting out today, Claire, if you were like, let's just say finance investment, that wasn't a blocker or a barrier right now, and you had the keys to a space and you had a 5-year runway, let's just say that, in a utopian situation, what would you do? What would you do differently to what you did previously?
Well, we are living in a different decade. When I opened my hub, there was no Google Workspace suite. There was no online sharing documents. People had big computers, and then they went to tiny little computers that you couldn't type on. Then they got to something normal. So life has changed a lot. But the key principles are people first. Like, what gets your business working is word of mouth. What gets people coming back is a feeling of belonging, feeling of being nurtured, feeling of place. Like, you are a place maker. You are bringing people to a place. And the stronger that you can build a community of interest and something that people feel really connected to and at home in, even if they only come in once a month or once a quarter, but something that they resonate with, the more that you can create that feeling, the more that those customers will be your pipeline, they will build your generator, and they will build their long term with you. So that hasn't changed. People don't change. What they're buying, how they interact with it, what they expect for their money, that's only gone up. The standards of what people expect have gone up and up.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, and what have you seen from conversations?
I mean, I think the expectations piece has gone up significantly. I keep going back to the original concept around co-working was almost accidental in its formation. It was people with excess space, like-minded people, coming together in a space where there may have been excess, and that was probably the advent of a lot of co-working spaces. I see a bigger addressable market for co-working now, or flex, or whatever we're calling it. And back in the day, your target market may have been different. It was, the self-employed, the freelancers and stuff. Now you have a legitimate target market when you're looking at mature businesses that have distributed teams across a country, across a continent, across the globe. So you can have some, and everybody does it. Look, you put your website up and you put the companies that are, working from your space. You can actually have some quite big logos there, well-known logos there now, and still be quite an independent operator. So I think that I personally think that the end user has changed and has I suppose there's a broadened spectrum now of end users.
Yes.
And you can have there's always been the theory that, co-working space, you could end up sitting next to anybody. That's actually true today more than ever. And I think that in itself creates bags of opportunity. But again, it comes with, as you mentioned, heightened expectations, which, I think back to when I started out in business, and not too dissimilar to yourself, Claire. It was all, it was working from the bedroom, and you're trying to get to a stage where you may be able to afford an office. This was all pre co-working and stuff. And then I think, once you get out, your first office, you're kind of happy just to be out of the house, and you're happy to, and like your first apartment, your first room when you go to college, you're just delighted to be out of the house, right? So your standards are the lower. But I think, that works for startups as well, in a business context, where you're just delighted to be in a room together. And look, fair enough, like when it's hot, open the window, we'll bring in a portable heater, and we live with that, until we can afford better standards. I think now, when you have people that may have gone straight out of college into a corporate environment where it's, air-conned, and there's reception desks, and there's vending machines, there's canteens, there's, you're surrounded by all these, they're just that expectation. They're just this is what comes with a workplace. When you put these people into co-working space, they're like, where's the vending machine? I'm like, vending machine? There's certain items there that, a co-working space may not have had to consider before. And vending machine is probably a bad example, but you kind of get the point I'm making. Design, has become a big part. I remember the first couple of co-working spaces I went to, the whole design was frugal chic, which is basically a nonsense way of saying, we got plyboard, we stuck it to the wall, we put graffiti on it, we did stencils, so that doesn't wash anymore. When you boil it back to what I'm saying now, it's all about glass walls, paneling, and I've mentioned in the past, sensors, environmental controlling sensors, and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, I think standards are the thing. Standards of the actual building are being heightened. But I just wonder, is there still a segment of a segment of the audience or ICP that are happy for the rough and ready, frugal chic, as I said. And I suppose, again, that all plays back into your brand, I suppose, Claire, doesn't it?
It does. I think you touched on a number of things there that I want to pick up on. One, the audience has diversified of who is using co-working hubs. What people think a co-working hub is, we can come back to, or what it isn't. But you've got employees of a large organisation sat next to freelancers, for instance, and particularly as we've got the rise of AI and this, who knows what's going to be happening over the next 10 years work-wise. They're very different cultural needs and different expectations and practical business needs that those customers have got. So how do you create a facility and service people that have got such diverse needs? Where's the sense of belonging? Is it a community of interest? Is it a community of place that you're bringing together? Or is it just anybody who'll buy space? And how do you manage the difference between a customer who's buying direct from you and a customer who's been told this is where you're working from because their organisation is allowing you access to that space? How do you choose the customers? Because if you have rotten eggs or rotten apples, like, it permeates through a community and through a culture. So there's a lot more, I'd say there's a lot more complexity now. Hub operators have got to understand tech platforms in a way that they didn't have before. I mean, it gives them all sorts of knowledge and data that is valuable. You're not having, we used to have to try and read and interpret and then invoice people's handwritten, this was my name, and this was my date, and this was my guest, and this is how long we were here for. I do not miss those days. At all. There's a good reason for tech. But life has changed. We're in 2026. We're not in 2015, and we're not in 25 when I first constituted the organisation. Life is different. What is 2035 going to be looking like? And leaders now, as much as they are like writing 5 and 10 year business plans, are looking at 1 year, 2 year, 3 year. How do we even imagine what 2035 is going to be like from now? How do how do we predict? How does a normal business leader try and understand what AI is going to do to their clients, and therefore how to plan the runway of supports and services that are going to be needed? In reality, humans need co-working hubs because of the people around them, as well as the Wi-Fi and the coffee. We know it's the Wi-Fi and the coffee, but really it's the people that sat next to and the culture that they're engaging with. That's never going to change. But what's the ecosystem that hub, that placemaking facility is connected into, that's going to have the greatest impact for their clients, that's going to help them navigate the next 10 years?
Yeah, it's a good point actually that you've brought up, and like we for the crack got our hands on some VR headsets recently because we'd read about co-working in virtual reality, and I thought, geez, like, let's have a go with this. It's kind of between the worlds of Zoom and actually being in a room with someone, right? So we gave it a go, and like, don't get me wrong, it's clunky, like the headsets are heavy, but the immersive environment is class, but it's novel, and I don't think we're there yet. But it did get me thinking, to your point there, is like, what does work look like? The actual action of the execution of work, what does that look like in 10 years time? And if is there going to be a need for a desk? Are we going to have physical monitors on a desk? Because these wearables are going to get smaller, and we need to consider that. So like, I just to kind of contextualize what I'm talking about. So with the VR headset, you could throw it on, and the next thing, you can have 20-foot monitors floating in the sky, in the room, and you can see people walking around the room beside you. So you have this whole AR piece. So I'm thinking, like, we may not need monitors on and then if you don't need monitors, why do you need a desk? Keyboards, they can all float in the sky as well. All the hand tracking stuff is getting very good. So to your point there, I'd be pretty, but I still think people need a place to go, whether they're, putting their VR headsets on in their bedroom or whatever. So I think the ecosystem and the community part is going to be incredibly important for sure.
And that needs designed into business strategy. Like community management, community engagement, like that just needs to be front and center at the core, as much as your tech or your building and your plants and your design and your AC. It just needs built in.
Yeah,
and it's easy.
It's like the car industry is going over. The car industry is going over a massive overhaul at the moment. Because if you think of cars, similar to a desk and a workstation, right? It was all around function. So the engine was put at the front of the car to get traction. So you could, and then the wheel was behind it, so you could see where you're going. The car industry are now looking at, self-drive cars. So you no longer need to, there could be a day where you no longer need to sit behind the wheel. And the engine no longer needs to be at the front because of, whatever way they want to do the weight distribution. Batteries can be a certain size. So what you're starting to see now in the concept of cars is meeting rooms on wheels that drive themselves. When you don't have to face forward and you don't have to sit beside people, it's totally tossed the idea of what a car is up into the air. And I'd say we could see the same thing coming with workstations or desks,
I think as well with any innovation, it's always great to have, these types of technologies actually exist now. So you're not even speaking about anything that's like crazy far out there. But if you're not talking about it, people might not realize how close it is. So there's an element of that being grounded in reality pretty soon. And then the other side is with the product diffusion curve, there's going to be a whole group of people who take a very long time to ever adopt that. So given the rate of tech and how fast that early innovator and early adopter group is going to reach that stuff, I think we are going to probably see like a polarity for a while where people are totally into like people who have the meta lens and are currently walking around with little cameras on their glasses. And you've got people going back to Nokia brick phones. Like, I think we're going to spend a bit of time with people at really far ends of the spectrum. And then all those people need to work and interact with workspaces. So operators are trying to cater like that whole piece of like knowing your audience and knowing who you're for is probably going to become more and more important as all of this emerges.
That's very interesting in terms of like the early adopters, because there's lots of types of early adopters. I've just spent some time here in Malaga with one of the people who was one of my first clients in the Melting Pot when it opened in 2007. I think she joined in 2008. So actually she's an early adopter of the co-working model and has been utilising spaces all over Europe since then. But she could see what it gave her. That's just, where am I going with this? It's just one type of early adopter, like utilising a shared resource space in the centre of Edinburgh that sold time rather than sold private desks or leases. That was completely innovative back then. What is going to be the innovations that some people are going to adopt early, and how does that rub up against the other people, for instance, that are sharing space? The people who I want the latest whiz-bang technology, thank you very much, versus the people who say, no, I want a yoga suite. And as a business operator who's got space, how do you know where to dedicate? Everybody wants something for nothing. The prices, what seems to me to be happening in the industry is prices don't seem to be changing, haven't changed much over the 20 years. How is it that costs keep going up, but costs to customers don't go up? Am I wrong there? But that's what it seems to me. It seems to be one of the subjects that we've touched upon in conferences.
Yeah.
It's like, there's a missing piece here. It's called money. Where is it going? Because it's not coming into the operator, and the customer says that they've got less money, but they're getting way more for their money than they ever got. So something's not adding up here for the long term.
Interesting. It's not something we've noticed, to be honest, Claire. Like in Ireland here, due to the Connected Hubs project, there's actually a natural marketplace after being created here. So it's very easy to look at Connected Hubs and see what an office or a day pass in Dublin will cost you versus a community run space in the west coast of Ireland, and you naturally would expect the prices to be different based on levels of demand and your downtown Dublin versus Ballinlough and County Roscommon. So that's not something I've noticed, that the prices have been sticky. It's an interesting thing to keep an eye out for, though, for sure.
And also you have the context of, being involved with that, your first space, 20 years ago. So that's like, you've got serious data there looking at, chatting to operators about pricing and costs across that span of time,
Employment costs go up, taxes go up. We have this technology and that technology, like all of the, what's it called? Tech tax. All of the things that yet more things that we've got to have in order to run the facility. I don't know. There just seems to be a gap.
Yeah, I get the tech tax phrase, all right, but with any tech, but anything you look to implement process wise from that, you have to make sure that you're getting time back for, Claire. With just listening to yourself there over the past while speak about, handwritten sign-in sheets and all that kind of stuff. I just wonder now, did you adopt much technology before you moved on, or where were you at with that side of the business? Yeah. Did you start to trade your time for software? Basically, I pay for the software, I get more time back. Did you kind of get into that? Yeah. If you were starting out today, what would be the tick box stuff that you're like, I must have this, I must have that, this, and how much time you reckon you could get back on, a previous version of yourself when you were running your space?
Yeah. Well, life was very different. It was before social media. Every customer came by word of mouth and direct hustling. I remember saying that at some conference. We were like, how did you get business? It was like, well, I asked people. I told them about it and I got them to come along, and I had face-to-face interactions. And then they filled in application forms to join, and it was paper-based. We are talking a long time ago. Now I would have a Google form, or if as the most basic thing, like a membership application that was a Google form. Ideally, one of the many tech platforms that now exist to run co-working hubs, we were like pioneer customers for those early tech platforms that are now mainstream part of the industry. They were learning on us and our systems that we'd built in, whatever mode that is not digital, not analog. It's not analog, but it was somewhere in between, I suppose.
Yeah.
I would absolutely recommend that people find and adopt an appropriate tech platform that is suitable for their business. And I actually think that the whole PIN code or like secure entry system is just so brilliant as compared to having staff have to be there at 7:30 in the morning or 8:30 in the morning or be the one that locks up physically. Like, use the tech that's available now that wasn't available then. Life would be very different. And put your human resource into things that humans do well, making cups of tea, having a chat, remembering people's names. And if you've got customers come in with fobs and their name pops up, learn their name,
You're speaking our language there, Claire.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Embrace the tech, let it do the heavy lifting.
Yeah, and this is the other thing, like if somebody's booked and they're coming in, you know their name before they're walking in. So, you can actually make people feel even more humble saying, "Hey, Claire," straight away. That's great there.
Doesn't have to be a big diary. Like way back then, we were like blocking it out. I mean, we are talking really early days. So, yeah, we adopted a lot of tech over the years. I'm not that techie, but I can totally see its place. Yeah.
And you're a quintessential example of somebody. You're not supposed to have it. You're not supposed to be techie. That's the tech is supposed to be for people who aren't techie.
80% functionality, really simple, and then for those who want to go deeper, that other 20% that's like all the little nuance here and the nuance there.
You've just described Baseworks. Just saying. Looking ahead, Claire, what are you most excited about at the moment in co-working? So whether that's like infrastructure or tools and tech, or maybe how operators are looking at success and what it means to succeed now.
I mean, I think, so personally, I'm excited that there is just this huge market awareness now of people. I can have a conversation with people that's not, is there a hyphen in co-working? But like, let's talk about the nuances. What's the difference between flex and a co-working hub? How do you know whether this flexible workspace facility speaks your culture, like where you fit in? Let's get deeper into embedding great community building and hospitality and joining up the entrepreneurial ecosystem of supports into facilities that not only have beautiful facilities with functioning IT and the things that join up and make it an easier customer journey and an easy staff delivery journey, but that really embed these amazing hubs of innovation and impact and entrepreneurialism and just good work. Let's embed those places across the landscape, whether that be in the cities or in the rural areas, in secondary towns. Let's allow people to work from where suits them, when suits them. And I'm also interested in how the policymakers that catch up with things a little bit later on in life actually enable us rather than hinder us. We know, there's sort of discussions about rates in the UK and business rates that could absolutely cripple the entrepreneurial ecosystem just by taxing inappropriately the wrong thing, by not understanding it. So, we're a bigger industry now. We've got more might, we've got more presence, we've got more profile, we've got more understanding, both from the customer and at the policies ecosystem level. So let's just embed and deliver. Let's get on and deliver really good hubs that make impact.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. Brilliant, Claire. Fantastic. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you join us today. Thank you so much for the conversation. We'll have to have a follow-up in a couple of months' time.
Always.
We'd love to have you join us again.
I was just going to tear into another handful of questions there, but no, I think you're right, Anne-Marie. Let's maybe wrap it up for another conversation.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to share again. It's a long journey. Take time.
Thanks for tuning in to Flex That Works. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to follow or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss our next episode. Connect with us on LinkedIn, watch the full episode on YouTube, and you can explore free tools and resources over at baseworks.co. This is Flex That Works, powered by Baseworks, here to help you scale your workspace, making it simpler and less stressful.